وما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله ورسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم ومن يعص الله ورسوله فقد ضل ضلالا مبينا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيد الأولين والآخرين وإمام المتقين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the ways of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam in addressing mistakes and errors was to do that indirectly, in the sense that he would not address the people, not to confront the people directly with their mistakes, and addressing the issue in a general term so that this would be sufficient. For example, and this happened so many times, the companions report an incident and they would say that the Prophet would come and address the public, alayhi salatu wassalam, about this topic without them referring to who had done it. They don't know. So for instance, the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam sees someone's spit in the wall of the masjid in the direction of the Qibla. And he was angered by that, alayhi salatu wassalam. So he addressed this to the public. In another incident, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam hears about the three of his companions who said that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was forgiven all his previous and upcoming futuristic sins. So he's not like us, therefore I would not sleep and pray all night long. The other one said, I would not eat and I would fast the whole year long. And the other one said, I would not marry women and enjoy intimacy. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam addressed this issue publicly. And he said, why do people say such and such? I pray and sleep, I eat and fast, I marry women. Whoever desires or follows other than my way, he's not from me. So the Prophet did not name them, alayhi salatu wasalam. Similarly, when he sent one of his companions to collect the zakat money, and they went to different tribes and cities and countries and came back, this person said, this is your zakat money and this portion is mine. They gave it to me as a gift. Now we know that if this individual had not assumed such a public position, no one would have given him anything. So a police officer, a governor, someone who is dealing with the public, a sales manager, or better more, a purchasing manager, procurement manager. People give him gifts. A physician, a doctor, pharmaceutical companies give him gifts, training courses in Dubai, laptops, mobile phones. Why? So that they would cut them some slack, as they say. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. In Islam, this is defined as a bribe. Something that you're given so that you would offer a service This fee you would not have been given had you not assumed such a position. So when you give an official money from under the counter, from under the table, this is because you want him to favor you, to allow you something, to prevent you from a fine. And he, because he received the money, he would do that. This is a bribe, and it's a major sin. And the Prophet cursed, alayhi salatu wasalam, those who deal with it. So when this companion came, the Prophet went and addressed the public in the masjid, not disclosing who this person is or was, rather saying, why is it that we employ people to do public work and they come back to us saying that this is the zakat money and this was given to me? Why didn't they sit in their parents' homes and then notice, would anybody give them anything or not? The answer is definitely not. They wouldn't give you this if you did not work for the government or for the company, or you could not give them any services. They don't go around the neighborhood distributing money. They came to you because you had the signature. So this form of correcting the mistake, by not confronting the people, rather by giving a general advice that would do the job, is one of the ways of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Not every time we have to confront people. Sometimes a public speech would do. Sometimes addressing the gathering without pinpointing the person I know that he does this haram thing, without saying, you do it. No, rather reminding them generally about Allah's wrath and what Allah prepared for those sinners in their grave, and how the torment of Allah Azza wa Jal is so painful. This might do the job. And this is best because, number one, you would avoid any negative reaction when addressing people face to face. Because Satan may provoke them to reply or to retaliate or to react in a form of self-vengeance, to get even. Also, when you give a general advice, it's more appealing to individuals, to people, rather than being confronted with it. And it's also concealing that person's own sin between the people, and definitely it increases the love for the teacher and for the advice giver. When I'm being addressed among others, and I know that you mean me, and I acknowledge that that sin is in me, but you're not addressing me, rather you're giving it to everyone else, and they don't know that I'm the one who had done it, I'd love you more. I'd have more respect for you because of your way of treating such a sin or a mistake. Now, let it be known that this is not the norm, I wouldn't say the norm, this is not so generic, and it cannot be applied to all cases. Sometimes there's no escape. It's inevitable that you have to address the problem head on. It has to be. And the Prophet did this, alayhi salatu wasalam. So you have to weigh the pros and the cons. You have to measure the consequences of your actions and choose the lesser of the two evils, if there is any evil, because you are forbidding an evil and vice, and you are enjoining, enforcing what is righteous and virtue or virtuous. So, for example, the Prophet is giving the Friday sermon, and a man is coming and stepping over people's shoulders, trying to reach the first line of the masjid. And this happens in Jum'ah, in Friday speeches or Friday sermons all the time. Regardless of how many times the Imam brings their attention to that this is prohibited. So many times people come early, 3 hours, 2 hours before the congregation begins, and they take their seat in the first rows. And when 5 minutes remain for the Imam to start his khutbah, when the masjid is packed or almost packed, you see latecomers coming from the end of the masjid and crossing people's shoulders and necks. People are sitting next to one another. He goes and, like a hurdle race, jump all the fences to go to the first row and spread people and try to narrow the gaps so that he would find a position. And the brother is, mashallah, doing the miswak, and he's so keen on the sunnah. What are you doing? He says, I want the first row. Good for you. What's the time? Oh, it's a couple of minutes before the Imam comes. So if you're so keen and eager to attain the first row, why didn't you come early? Oh, I was busy, I was reading, I was sleeping, This does not give you the right to annoy people and to take their positions and to give them hardship by squeezing them right and left. So, oh, I'm just trying to get reward. No, you want to get reward, come early. You don't want to get the reward. You want recognition. You want people to say, mashallah, he's praying in the first row. But this is not your right. It was not lawfully attained. You came late. Yet you still want people to speak, or you still want to boast about it after a few hours and say, yeah, I was in the first row. You weren't, akhi. The Prophet ﷺ once saw a man doing this, jumping over people's necks and shoulders. He interrupted his khutbah, his sermon, he interrupted it and said to the man, sit, for you are late and you're annoying and harming people. You did two mistakes. You're late. Not only that, you're adding insult to injury. You are annoying and harming people by what you're doing. Sit wherever there's a spot. Don't cross people's shoulders like this. This is not permissible. Here, the Prophet did not, alayhi salatu wasalam, speak in a general term. Rather, he addressed a particular individual. As in the hadith of Salik al-Ghatafani, may Allah be pleased with him, when the Prophet was also giving khutbah al-Jumu'ah, and he saw Salik coming in and sitting. So he interrupted the khutbah and said, Salik, did you pray 2 rak'ahs before sitting down? And he said, no. The Prophet said, stand up and pray 2 rak'ahs. This had to be corrected on the spot because the man had already done this mistake. So what to do? If he spoke and addressed it generally, maybe that would not have served the purpose. Also, one of the ways of the Prophet ﷺ in addressing people's errors and mistakes and sins is to provoke public opinion against the one who has made that mistake. Some mistakes need punishment. and to be countered in the same weight of that mistake. One of the major sins in Islam is to harm and annoy your own neighbor, Muslim or non-Muslim. The Prophet says, alayhi salatu wasalam, whoever believes in Allah and the Day of Judgment must honor his neighbor. This is an etiquette. Actually, it's a ritual in our religion that a lot of the Muslims have neglected, unfortunately. And I won't go into this because it's a long topic. A man once came to the Prophet ﷺ, complaining of his neighbor, of his harm. Such harm could be throwing the garbage in front of your neighbor's house, taking his parking spot, turning on the music, or having loud noises, or banging on his wall, any type of discomfort. So the man kept on coming to the Prophet ﷺ, complaining of what his neighbor is doing. And the Prophet would say, go and be patient. Be tolerant. He's your neighbor. Maybe he'll change. And the man kept on coming and coming. So the Prophet ﷺ, after 3 times of the man's complaint, he said, if this is the case, and he's not stopping this harm to you as a neighbor, take your furniture and clothes and put it on the walkway, on the road in front of your home. So the man did so. And of course, he was next to his furniture at the roadside. So people walking by said, why are all your furnitures and clothes on the road? Why are you doing this? So he kept telling them that my neighbor is doing so and so and so to me. And I went to the Prophet, and the Prophet ﷺ told me to do this. The moment the people heard of his neighbor's harm to him and abuse, and they heard that the Prophet ﷺ was the one who ordered him to take his stuff out, they started cursing his neighbor. May Allah curse him. May Allah does this and that, may Allah do this and that to him. Because they knew that he was the transgressor. When the neighbor came and saw the people cursing him and making dua against him, he realized the gravity of his sin. And the dua coming, the negative dua coming against him. So he said, listen, get your stuff back. By Allah, I will never harm you again, and you will never see something that you dislike from me. The gravity of such a mistake called for such a provocation of the people against him. You may call it public shaming, whatever, but this was required because of this man's huge mistake. Similarly, if you lend someone money and he doesn't pay it back, though he's capable, and this happens a lot. So many people come and borrow money, and then you never see them again. And you know that they have money. They're going on holidays, they're buying fancy cars, they're buying things for the kids, and they're living normally. And whenever you call them, they block you. They disregard you. They try to avoid meeting you. So what to do in such a case? We have a saying in Arabic that when someone wants money from you, they kiss your hand. Once they get the money from you and you want your money back, you kiss their feet. Because they're not going to pay you back. Not all the time, but unfortunately people nowadays think that they're smart, they're good traders by fooling others and getting their money from them and not returning it. Such a huge and grave sin requires punishment. And this is why the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, if one who can afford it, meaning he can afford to pay back, if one who can afford it delays payment, his honor and punishment become permissible. His honor, meaning his reputation, `ird. And `ird in Arabic means it's the place susceptible for criticism and praise. So it's your reputation that is susceptible for such a thing. So the Prophet says, if he can pay it off, pay it back, yet he delays, then this makes his honor permissible, meaning I could sit in gatherings, I go to his workplace, I tarnish his reputation in social media saying that this individual took money from me and it's been 5 years and he's not giving it back. People who come and ask me, oh, this individual proposed to our sister. I said, no. This guy is a fraud and he's a cheater and he's a liar. He took X amount of money from me and he did not return it back. And this is totally halal. Sometimes you have to do this with people who have no fear of Allah. Provoke the public against them. Husbands who consider themselves to be men, abusing their wives, beating them up, forcing them to work and taking their salary, forcing their wives to chip in the expenses of the house and paying the rent and the utility bills, consuming their savings, building a house. The wife is thinking that this is for both of us, and all of a sudden he turns away and gets married to a second wife and uses this house to support his second marriage, and maybe kicks the first wife. And in some cases, it's the parents of the wife who bought the house, and out of good gesture and out of their own good will, they made him a co-owner, as thinking that he was a real man and he would honor their daughter. And all of a sudden, he flips and says, no, it's a gift, it's mine, I'll take it. Subhanallah. Some people don't have any honor in their faces, in their lives. And the biggest problem is when they associate this with being religious and committed to the deen. A'udhu billah. This is what hurts the most. This is like stabbing me in the heart. When someone pretending to represent religion and Islam and being a good practicing Muslim, following the Sunnah, following the correct Aqidah, and you see him deal like a weasel, like a rat. This is not Islam, but you're tarnishing the reputation of Islam. People are hating Islam because of you. And this is why such public shaming should be done in certain conditions. Again, weigh the pros and cons. Weigh whether this was an isolated random mistake, or this is a way of life that this particular individual is doing that has to be rebuked and exposed. So sometimes we need to weigh the pros and cons and act according to the way of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. We have a short break. Stay tuned, and inshallah we'll be right back.